How could a Thanksgiving celebration turn into a public reckoning? When my grandmother confronted me about $1 million vacation home I never knew existed, my sister's secrets unraveled in front of the entire family. Minutes later, a lawyer walked in, and I finally revealed everything she'd stolen from me. The November rain hammered against the windows of my cramped studio apartment as I fumbled for the light switch in the darkness. The electricity had been shut off again. Third time this year. I pulled out my phone's flashlight and navigated through the sparse furniture to my makeshift desk, where a stack of overdue bills waited like accusers in the dim glow. Ethan Caldwell, 33 years old, college-educated, and living paycheck to paycheck. My sister Brittany would have a field day if she could see me now, stumbling around in the dark like some kind of failure. But then again, Brittany always found ways to remind me of my shortcomings, even when the lights were on. 3 days earlier, I'd sat at the polished oak table in my parents' suburban dining room, watching Brittany hold court like she always did. Her auburn hair was perfectly styled, her designer blazer immaculate, and her voice carried that confident tone that made everyone lean in when she spoke. "Philip and I just closed on another property," she announced, cutting into her perfectly prepared salmon. "Our third investment this year. Philip's really shown a talent for spotting undervalued assets." Philip Rivers, her husband of 8 years, beamed with pride beside her. He was a pleasant enough guy, though he seemed to exist primarily as an extension of Brittany's ambitions. "Brittany's the real mastermind," he said, reaching over to squeeze her hand. "I just follow her lead." Our father, Carson Caldwell, nodded approvingly. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. You've always had such a good head for business." Our mother, Helen, smiled warmly. "We're so proud of both of you. And how are your parents doing, Philip? Still enjoying their retirement?" "Oh, they're fantastic," Philip replied. "Actually, they've found this amazing place to stay. A beautiful lakefront property. They've never been happier." I picked at my meatloaf, the cheaper option Mom had prepared alongside Brittany's salmon, and tried to contribute. "That's great. Where did they end up settling?" Brittany's fork paused halfway to her mouth, just for a split second before she continued eating. "Oh, just a place we found for them. Nothing too fancy." The conversation moved on, but something about Brittany's reaction nagged at me. It was subtle, the brief hesitation, the way she avoided eye contact. But I'd known my sister for 33 years. She was hiding something. Later that evening, as I helped Mom clear the dishes, Grandmother Judith arrived for her weekly visit. At 81, Judith Caldwell was still a force of nature. She walked with a silver-headed cane, but moved with the authority of someone who'd built a small fortune through decades of shrewd investments and careful planning. "Ethan, dear," she said, pulling me aside in the living room while the others chatted in the kitchen. "I have something for you." She handed me a cream-colored envelope with my name written in her elegant script. "I'm proud of you, you know. You work harder than anyone gives you credit for." Before I could respond, Brittany appeared at my shoulder. "What's this? Family secrets?" Her laugh was light, but her eyes were sharp as they focused on the envelope. "Just some paperwork," Grandmother Judith said, though her tone suggested it was more than that. "Nothing that concerns you, Brittany." Brittany's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Of course not. I just worry about Ethan sometimes. He's been struggling so much lately." She placed a perfectly manicured hand on my arm. "Maybe I should help you organize your finances, little brother. I've gotten pretty good at managing complex situations." "I'm fine," I said, slipping the envelope into my jacket pocket. "Thanks, though." "Are you sure? Because I noticed you didn't contribute much to the conversation about real estate tonight. It's a complicated market, and I'd hate for you to make any unfortunate decisions." The condescension in her voice was wrapped in sisterly concern, but it stung nonetheless. This was classic Brittany, offering help while simultaneously highlighting my inadequacies. "Brittany," our father called from the kitchen, "can you come help us plan the Thanksgiving arrangements?" As she walked away, I caught Grandmother Judith watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Don't let her get to you, dear," she said quietly. "Some people mistake kindness for weakness. They're usually wrong." The next morning I tried to open the envelope Grandmother Judith had given me, but it seemed to have vanished from my jacket pocket. I searched my apartment thoroughly, checking every surface, every drawer, every possible hiding place. Nothing. When I called to ask if I might have dropped it at my parents' house, Mom said she'd check but came up empty. "Maybe it fell out in the car," she suggested. "I'll keep looking." But I had a sinking feeling it hadn't simply fallen out anywhere. 2 weeks later, at our regular family Sunday brunch, the conversation turned to Thanksgiving plans. I'd been looking forward to this, maybe hosting the family at my place for once, despite its limitations. I'd been saving up for weeks, planning a modest but heartfelt meal. "I was thinking," I began, setting down my coffee cup, "maybe this year I could—" "Oh, that reminds me!" Brittany interrupted, clapping her hands together. "Philip and I want to host Thanksgiving this year. We've got the space, and I've already started planning the menu." "That's wonderful, dear," Mom said immediately. "Your house is perfect for entertaining." "Absolutely," Dad agreed. "Much more practical than trying to squeeze everyone into—" He caught himself before finishing the sentence, but the implication hung in the air. "Much more practical than my tiny apartment." "I was actually going to offer," I said, trying to keep my voice level. Brittany's laugh tinkled like broken glass. "Oh, Ethan, that's so sweet of you. But honestly, with your situation, it's probably better if someone with more resources takes care of it. I mean, you're practically homeless by choice at this point." The table erupted in laughter. Even my parents chuckled, though Mom at least had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable afterward. "I'm not homeless," I said quietly. "Of course not," Brittany said, patting my hand. "I just meant that tiny place of yours. Barely enough room for one person, let alone a family gathering. But don't worry, we'll make sure you have a lovely time at our place." Philip nodded enthusiastically. "My parents are really looking forward to meeting everyone. They've been raving about how grateful they are for their living situation. They keep saying they feel like they're living in a dream." Something cold settled in my stomach. "Your parents? I thought they were staying at that lakefront place you mentioned." "They are," Philip said. "It's absolutely beautiful. Right on the water, huge windows, gourmet kitchen. They've never lived anywhere so nice." Brittany shot him a look that could have frozen fire. "Philip, I'm sure everyone doesn't need to hear about every detail of your parents' living arrangements." But Philip was oblivious to the warning. "Are you kidding? I could talk about that place for hours. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, a deck that overlooks the lake. They've got a little boat now, and Dad's taken up fishing again. Mom's turned the sunroom into an art studio. They keep joking that they never want to leave." The conversation moved on, but those words echoed in my mind. They never want to leave. There was something about the way Brittany had tried to shut Philip up, something about the guilty flush that had crept up her neck. That night, I lay awake in my narrow bed, staring at the water stain on the ceiling and thinking about missing envelopes and lakefront properties and the way my sister's eyes had gone cold when Philip started describing his parents' dream home. I didn't know it yet, but Thanksgiving was going to change everything. The pattern had been building for years, though I'd been too trusting, or maybe too naive, to see it clearly. As I sat in my apartment the Monday after that disastrous brunch, I found myself thinking back to when it all really started. 3 years ago, Dad had suffered a mild heart attack. Nothing life-threatening, but scary enough to shake the whole family. While he was in the hospital recovering, I'd taken 2 weeks off work, unpaid time I couldn't really afford, to help Mom manage everything. I'd driven her to every doctor's appointment, handled the insurance paperwork, and picked up extra shifts at my weekend job to help cover their medical bills. Brittany had been too busy with a major client to help much during those first crucial weeks. but she'd swooped in just as Dad was getting back on his feet. "I think we need to have a serious conversation about Mom and Dad's finances," she'd announced during one of our family dinners. "This health scare has really opened my eyes to how unprepared they are for retirement." I'd looked up from my plate, confused. "What do you mean?" "I've been helping them organize everything. Their insurance covered most of the hospital costs and—" "Ethan, sweetie," Brittany had interrupted, with that patronizing smile I was beginning to hate. "I know you mean well, but this is bigger than just paying some medical bills. We're talking about long-term financial planning, estate management, tax implications. It's really more my area of expertise." And just like that, I'd been edged out of the conversation. Brittany had presented herself as the responsible daughter, the one with the business acumen to handle complex financial matters. My parents, grateful for any help and impressed by her confidence, had handed over more and more control. Within 6 months, Brittany was managing their investment portfolio, handling their tax preparations, and serving as the primary contact for their financial advisor. When I'd asked about it, Dad had just shrugged and said, "Brittany's got a real head for this stuff. She's saving us a fortune in fees." But it wasn't just the big financial decisions. Brittany had gradually positioned herself as the family's unofficial coordinator for everything important: birthday parties, anniversary celebrations, holiday gatherings. Somehow, they all ended up being planned and hosted by Brittany and Philip. My contributions were relegated to bringing side dishes or helping with cleanup. "It's just easier this way," Mom had explained when I'd offered to plan Dad's 60th birthday party. "Brittany's so organized, and she has such a lovely house for entertaining." The lovely house that I'd helped them afford, I'd wanted to say. The down payment had come partially from money I'd lent Philip when he was between jobs 2 years earlier. Money he'd never paid back, though he'd apparently forgotten all about it. Now, sitting in my kitchen with a cup of instant coffee, I thought about Philip's casual mention of his parents' lakefront paradise. I pulled out my laptop and started searching property records for the area, though I wasn't sure exactly what I was looking for. Lake Whitmore had several high-end properties, and I scrolled through listings and recent sales. Most were well out of reach for normal people, 7 figures for anything decent, with the truly spectacular homes pushing into the multi-million range. How exactly were Philip's retired parents affording a place like that? Philip worked in mid-level marketing, and Brittany's job, while well-paying, wasn't exactly making them wealthy. His parents had been comfortable but not rich. His dad had been a high school principal, his mom a nurse. I was still puzzling over this when my phone buzzed with a text from Brittany. "Family dinner tomorrow night. Can you bring rolls? Store-bought is fine. I know you're busy." Store-bought is fine, as if I couldn't be trusted to bake dinner rolls. As if my contribution to family gatherings was so minimal that even the bread could be an afterthought. The next evening, I arrived at my parents' house with a bag of artisanal rolls from the expensive bakery across town. A small rebellion that cost me $20 I didn't really have. The family was already gathered in the living room, and I could hear Philip's voice carrying from the kitchen. "Never seen Dad so relaxed. He's out on the water every morning now. Mom keeps saying it's like a second honeymoon." I walked into the kitchen to find Philip showing photos on his phone to my parents. The images showed an older couple, Philip's parents, Gerald and Marlene Rivers, standing on what looked like a spectacular wooden deck overlooking a pristine lake. Behind them, through sliding glass doors, I could see glimpses of a beautifully appointed interior. "It really is gorgeous," Mom was saying. "They look so happy." "What's this?" I asked, setting the rolls on the counter. "Just some pictures of my parents at their place," Philip said, beaming with pride. "They sent these yesterday. Look at this sunset view." He swiped to the next photo, and I felt something cold settle in my chest. The house was stunning, clearly expensive, clearly far beyond what a retired principal and nurse should be able to afford. The kind of place that would cost millions, not thousands. How exactly did they manage to afford something like this? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Philip's smile faltered slightly, and he glanced toward the living room where Brittany was talking with Dad. Well, they're renting. Sort of. It's complicated. Complicated how? Philip. Brittany's voice came from the doorway. Are you boring everyone with those photos again? She walked over and smoothly took the phone from his hands, closing the photo app. I'm sure Mom and Dad don't need to see every sunset your parents photograph. I was just curious about the arrangement, I said. It seems like an amazing place for a rental. Brittany's smile was bright and sharp. Oh, you know how these vacation rental situations work. Sometimes you can find really good deals if you're flexible with timing and willing to help with maintenance. Philip's dad is very handy. Something about her explanation felt rehearsed, but before I could ask any follow-up questions, she'd already moved on to discussing the Thanksgiving menu. Later that week, I found myself driving out to Lake Whitmore. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I needed to see this place for myself. The area was exactly as upscale as I'd imagined. Winding roads lined with mature trees, discreet driveways leading to houses that probably cost more than most people made in a decade. I drove slowly, looking for any sign of the house from Philip's photos. After about an hour, I found it. The distinctive deck, the angle of the roofline, the view of the lake. It was unmistakable. And there, in the driveway, was a car I recognized. Philip's silver sedan. I parked across the street and watched as Philip emerged from the house, followed by an older man who must have been his father. They were both carrying fishing gear, chatting and laughing as they walked toward a small boat dock. This wasn't a vacation rental or a temporary arrangement. This was clearly home. As I sat there watching, a mail truck pulled up to the house. The driver walked to the mailbox and deposited a stack of letters and packages. From my vantage point, I could see him checking an address label against the box number. After the truck left, curiosity got the better of me. I waited until Philip and his father had taken the boat out onto the lake, then walked casually past the mailbox. The name on it read, Rivers Family, and underneath, in smaller letters, Property Management, B. Caldwell Rivers. B. Caldwell Rivers, Brittany. My sister wasn't just helping Philip's parents find a place to stay, she was managing the property, which meant she had access to it, control over it, and quite possibly ownership of it. But how? And why had she never mentioned owning $1 million lakefront property? I walked back to my car with my mind racing. That missing envelope from grandmother Judith suddenly seemed a lot more significant, and Brittany's pattern of inserting herself into family financial matters took on a much more sinister tone. As I drove home, I passed a real estate office and made an impulsive decision to stop. The agent, a friendly woman named Patricia Volkoff, was happy to chat about the Lake Whitmore market. Oh yes, that's a beautiful area, she said when I mentioned the general neighborhood. Properties there don't come on the market often, and when they do, they go fast, mostly to wealthy families looking for vacation homes or investment properties. What kind of price range are we talking about? For a decent lakefront property, you're looking at 1.2 to 2.5 million, depending on size and condition. The really spectacular ones can go higher. 1.2 to 2.5 million. There was no way Philip's parents could afford that. There was no way Philip and Brittany could afford that for that matter. So where had the money come from? And why did I have the growing suspicion that it should have been mine? The next few weeks passed in a blur of growing suspicion and careful investigation. I couldn't shake the image of that mailbox with Brittany's name on it, or the casual way Philip's parents had settled into what was clearly a multi-million-dollar property. I started paying closer attention to family conversations, looking for clues I might have missed before. At the next Sunday dinner, Gerald and Marlene Rivers joined us, the first time I'd met Philip's parents in person. They were a pleasant couple in their early 70s, and they couldn't stop talking about their living situation. We feel so blessed, Marlene gushed to my mother over coffee. When Philip told us about this opportunity, we thought it was too good to be true. A place like that, and we're able to stay there indefinitely. Indefinitely? I asked. Gerald nodded enthusiastically. The arrangement is so generous. We're basically just paying utilities and maintenance costs. Philip's family has been so good to us. I glanced at Brittany, who was suddenly very interested in clearing dessert plates. That's quite an arrangement, I said. What kind of property management company offers deals like that? Oh, it's not a company exactly, Marlene said. It's more of a family trust situation. Brittany explained it all to us, but honestly, the legal details went over my head. All I know is we're incredibly grateful. A family trust. The words hit me like a physical blow. Grandmother Judith had mentioned family trusts before. She'd been restructuring her estate planning over the past few years, setting up various trusts for different family members. That's wonderful, I managed to say, though my voice sounded strange in my own ears. After dinner, I cornered Philip in the kitchen while he was helping with dishes. Your parents seem really happy with their living situation. Oh, they are, he said, his face lighting up. Honestly, Ethan, I can't thank your family enough. When Brittany told us about the trust property being available, it was like a miracle. My parents had been so worried about retirement, and this has given them such peace of mind. The trust property? Philip paused, seeming to realize he might have said too much. Well, Brittany could explain it better than I can. It's all very complicated legal stuff. I'm sure it is, I said carefully. But I'm curious, when did this arrangement start? Let's see. It was right after your grandmother set up the new trust documents. Maybe 4 months ago? Brittany handled all the paperwork. She's amazing with that kind of thing. 4 months ago, right around the time Grandmother Judith had given me that envelope, the envelope that had mysteriously disappeared. That night, I called my friend Lena Tran. We'd known each other since college, and she'd gone on to become a paralegal at a respected law firm. If anyone could help me understand trust law and property transfers, it would be her. Can you meet me for coffee tomorrow? I asked. I need some advice about a legal situation. Of course, she said. But Ethan, you sound stressed. Is everything okay? I'm not sure yet. I think someone might have stolen something from me, but I need to understand how it could have happened. We met the next day at an upscale cafe downtown, neutral territory where we were unlikely to run into anyone from my family. Lena listened carefully as I explained the situation. The missing envelope, the lakefront property, Philip's parents' indefinite stay, and the references to trust documents. This sounds potentially serious, she said, stirring her latte thoughtfully. Trust fraud is a real thing, and if someone forged documents or intercepted legal communications, that's criminal behavior. But how would I even prove something like that? I don't have any documentation of what was supposed to be in that envelope. We'd need to start with property records, Lena said. Those are public information. If there was a property transfer involving a trust, there should be a paper trail. I can help you look into it. Would you? I don't even know where to start. Leave it to me. Give me the address of the lakefront property and any other details you can remember. I'll do some digging and see what I can find. 3 days later, Lena called with news that made my stomach drop. Ethan, you need to sit down for this, she said. I found the property records, and it's worse than we thought. According to the documents Lena had uncovered, the lakefront property had indeed been purchased through a family trust, a trust established by Judith Caldwell for the benefit of her grandson, Ethan Caldwell. The property had been bought 8 months ago for $1.8 million. But here's the problem, Lena continued. The trust documents show that you signed off on allowing Philip's parents to live there rent-free for an indefinite period. There's also a property management agreement giving your sister full authority to make decisions about the property. I never signed anything like that, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I was afraid you'd say that. Ethan, if you didn't sign these documents, then someone forged your signature. And if your sister intercepted the original trust documents and manipulated the situation to benefit her in-laws, we're talking about fraud on multiple levels. I sat in my kitchen, staring at the phone, trying to process what this meant. Grandmother Judith had bought me a $1.8 million house. Brittany had somehow stolen it from me before I even knew it existed. And Philip's parents were living in my house while I struggled to pay rent on a studio apartment. What can I do? I asked. First, we need to get copies of all the documents. I can request them through official channels. Then we need to have a handwriting expert examine those signatures. If we can prove forgery, we can take this to the police and to a judge. How long will that take? A few weeks, maybe a month if we push hard. But Ethan, you should know. This is going to get ugly. If your sister really did this, she's committed serious crimes, and your family is going to be caught in the middle. After hanging up, I sat in my apartment for a long time, thinking about Brittany's smug smile and Philip's grateful parents, and the way my family had dismissed my struggles while praising my sister's success. All this time, I'd been living paycheck to paycheck while my own house, my own beautiful, expensive house, was being used as a retirement paradise for people who weren't even related to me. The anger that had been building for weeks suddenly crystallized into something cold and focused. Brittany had stolen from me, lied to me, and humiliated me in front of our entire family. She'd manipulated our parents, forged my signature, and committed fraud, all while positioning herself as the responsible, successful daughter. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd left a paper trail. I pulled out my calendar and circled the date of Thanksgiving dinner, now just 2 weeks away. Brittany wanted to host the family gathering, wanted to play the role of the generous hostess in her beautiful suburban home. She wanted to bask in everyone's admiration, while Philip's parents sent grateful texts from the lakefront property that should have been mine. Fine, let her host Thanksgiving, because I was going to make sure it was a meal no one would ever forget. The next 2 weeks became a careful dance of investigation and preparation. While Brittany busied herself with Thanksgiving planning, sending cheerful group texts about menu coordination and seating arrangements, I was quietly building a case that would destroy her. Lena worked her magic with the legal documents, and what she uncovered was even more damning than I'd expected. Not only had someone forged my signature on multiple trust-related documents, but there was evidence of wire transfers, property management fees being diverted to accounts controlled by Brittany, and a complex web of financial manipulation that had been going on for months. "Look at this," Lena said, spreading papers across the table at our regular cafe meeting. "Your sister didn't just steal the house. She's been charging the trust for property management services, maintenance costs, and something called beneficiary coordination fees. She's made almost $60,000 off this scam." I stared at the bank statements and invoices, feeling sick. $60,000 that should have been mine? $60,000 that she stole from a trust established for your benefit, yes. But it gets worse. Look at this email chain. She handed me printed copies of emails between Brittany and someone at a property management company. The messages discussed managing the beneficiary's expectations and ensuring the current occupants can remain undisturbed. One email from Brittany was particularly damning. "The beneficiary is unaware of the property transfer and should remain so until we've established permanent occupancy rights for the Rivers family." She planned this, I said, reading the emails again. This wasn't some impulsive decision. She systematically stole my inheritance. "And she documented every step of it," Lena agreed. "Criminals always think they're smarter than they are. She kept records of everything, probably thinking she needed them for tax purposes or to cover herself legally. Instead, she's created a perfect evidence trail." While Lena continued gathering documentation, I made an appointment with Laura Hensley, the attorney who had been handling Grandmother Judith's estate planning for years. I'd met her a few times at family gatherings. She was a sharp, professional woman in her mid-40s who had earned Judith's trust through decades of careful legal work. "I need to discuss some concerns about a family trust," I told her when I called to schedule the appointment. "Of course, Ethan. I have some time next week. Is this regarding the Lake Whitmore Property Trust?" My heart skipped. "You know about that?" "Naturally. I helped your grandmother establish it. She was very specific about her intentions for that trust. Is there a problem? I think there might be. I'd prefer to discuss it in person, if that's all right. When I met with Laura the following Tuesday, her professional demeanor quickly shifted to concern as I explained the situation. I showed her the forged documents, the email chains, and the evidence of financial manipulation. "This is fraud," she said bluntly after reviewing everything. "Clear, documented fraud. Your sister has committed multiple felonies." "What can we do about it?" Laura leaned back in her chair, considering. "Legally, we can file criminal charges and civil suits. We can get the property transferred back to you immediately and recover all the money she's stolen. But Ethan, I have to ask, what outcome are you hoping for here?" "I want my house back. I want the money she stole, and I want everyone to know what she did." "The first two are straightforward. The third, well, that depends on how public you want this to become." I thought about all the family dinners where Brittany had been praised while I was dismissed. All the times she'd positioned herself as the responsible one while treating me like a failure. All the condescending smiles and patronizing comments. "I want it very public," I said. Laura nodded slowly. "In that case, I have a suggestion. Your grandmother is hosting the family for Thanksgiving, correct?" "Actually, Brittany is hosting this year. Even better, what if I were to attend as a family friend? Your grandmother and I have known each other for 20 years. It wouldn't be unusual for me to stop by during the holidays." "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking that sometimes the most effective justice happens in front of the people who matter most. Your sister has built her reputation on being trustworthy and responsible. What if that reputation were to be publicly destroyed at the moment when she's trying to play the perfect hostess?" The idea was appealing, but I wanted to make sure we had everything we needed. "What about Philip's parents? They're innocent in this. They were told this was all legitimate." "We'll handle that compassionately," Laura assured me. "They'll need to vacate the property, but we can give them reasonable time to find alternative arrangements. The real targets here are your sister and her husband." Over the next week, Laura and I refined our plan. She would attend Thanksgiving dinner as a family friend, bringing with her a complete legal file documenting Brittany's crimes. We would present the evidence publicly, in front of the entire family, ensuring that Brittany couldn't spin the story or manipulate the narrative. Meanwhile, I continued playing my role as the struggling younger brother. I responded to Brittany's group texts about Thanksgiving preparations, offered to bring side dishes, and acted appropriately grateful for her generosity in hosting. "I can't wait to see everyone," I texted back when she sent out the final dinner details. "It's going to be such a special gathering." I had no idea how special it was going to be. The night before Thanksgiving, I sat in my apartment with all the evidence spread across my kitchen table. Bank statements, forged documents, email printouts, property records, and a detailed timeline of Brittany's fraud. Laura had prepared a complete legal brief, and Lena had helped me organize everything into a presentation that would be impossible to deny or dismiss. Tomorrow, Brittany would be playing hostess, basking in the admiration of our family while Philip's parents sent grateful photos from the lakefront house that belonged to me. She'd probably make some speech about family and gratitude, positioning herself as the generous daughter who brought everyone together. Instead, she was going to get the public reckoning she deserved. I looked at my calendar, where I'd circled the Thanksgiving date in red ink weeks ago. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, the truth would finally come out. I packed all the evidence into a locked briefcase and set it by my door. Then I went to bed and slept better than I had in months. Thanksgiving morning dawned crisp and clear, the kind of perfect autumn day that made everything seem possible. I woke up early, showered carefully, and put on my best shirt, a navy blue button-down that I'd been saving for special occasions. Today definitely qualified. The briefcase sat by my door like a loaded weapon, packed with months of careful investigation and documentation. Inside were copies of every forged document, every fraudulent transaction, every piece of evidence that would expose Brittany's systematic theft. My phone buzzed with the usual pre-gathering flurry of family texts. Brittany, as always, was orchestrating everything with military precision. Brittany, looking forward to seeing everyone at 2 p.m. Philip is making his famous stuffing and I've got the turkey handled. Can't wait to celebrate with my favorite people. I stared at that last message for a long moment. It's going to be perfect. She had no idea how right she was. I typed back, "Thanks for hosting, Brittany. Really looking forward to this. It's going to be unforgettable." Around noon, Laura called to confirm our plan. "I'll arrive about 30 minutes after dinner starts. Are you ready for this?" "More than ready," I said, surprising myself with how calm I felt. "Remember, once we start presenting evidence, there's no going back. Your sister is going to be facing serious charges." "I understand." I drove to my parents' house to pick them up. They were both in good spirits, excited about the family gathering and full of praise for Brittany's hosting abilities. "She's really outdone herself this year," Mom said as we drove toward Brittany's suburban neighborhood. "She's always been so good at bringing the family together," Dad added. I gripped the steering wheel a little tighter but kept my voice neutral. She certainly has a talent for managing family situations. When we pulled into Brittany's driveway, I could see she'd gone all out. The front yard was decorated with tasteful autumn arrangements, and warm light glowed from every window. Brittany met us at the door, looking radiant in a burgundy dress. Her smile was warm and genuine as she hugged our parents, and for just a moment, I almost felt bad about what was coming. Almost. "Ethan," she said, embracing me with what seemed like real affection. "I'm so glad you're here." "Special occasion," I said. I wanted to contribute something meaningful. The house was beautifully decorated, and the smell of roasting turkey filled the air. Gerald and Marlene Rivers were settled in the living room, looking comfortable and content. "You simply must come visit us," Marlene said, clasping my hand. "The sunsets are absolutely breathtaking." "I'd love to see it sometime," I said truthfully. "I hear it's a spectacular property." Dinner proceeded smoothly for the first hour. The food was excellent, the conversation flowed easily, and Brittany played the role of gracious hostess to perfection. Around 3:30 she stood to make a toast, raising her crystal glass with a smile that could have graced a magazine cover. "I just want to say how grateful I am to have all of you here today," she began. "Family is everything to me, and being able to bring everyone together in our home, well, it just makes me feel incredibly blessed." Everyone raised their glasses. "I also want to thank Gerald and Marlene for joining us. Having Philip's parents as part of our extended family has been such a joy." Gerald beamed. "We can't thank you enough, dear. The generosity your family has shown us has changed our lives." "That's what family does for each other," Brittany said, looking directly at me. "We take care of the people we love, even when it requires sacrifice." I checked my watch. 3:35 p.m. Laura would be arriving any minute. The doorbell rang. "Oh," Brittany said, looking puzzled. "I wasn't expecting anyone else." "I'll get it," I said, briefcase in hand. "I think I know who it is." I opened the door to find Laura Hensley standing on the porch, carrying a leather portfolio that matched mine. "Laura," I said loudly enough for the dining room to hear. "What a wonderful surprise." Brittany appeared behind me, her hostess smile firmly in place but her eyes slightly confused. "Laura, how lovely to see you." "Actually," Laura said, stepping into the foyer, "I'm here to see all of you. I have some important family business to discuss." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Brittany's smile faltered for just a second before snapping back into place. As we walked back toward the dining room, I caught Brittany's eye. For the first time in my life, I saw something there I'd never seen before. The dining room fell silent as Laura and I entered. The warm atmosphere that had filled the room moments earlier evaporated, replaced by a tension so thick you could cut it with the carving knife still sitting beside the turkey. "Everyone," I said, setting my briefcase on the sideboard. "I'd like you to meet Laura Hensley. She's been Grandmother Judith's attorney for the past 20 years. Laura nodded to the room. "Good afternoon. I apologize for interrupting, but there's a matter of significant importance that needs to be addressed." Brittany's face had gone pale. "I'm not sure Thanksgiving dinner is the appropriate venue for legal discussions." "Actually," Grandmother Judith interrupted, "I think this is exactly the right time. Laura, what brings you here?" Laura withdrew a thick folder. "Mrs. Caldwell, 4 months ago, you established a trust for the purchase of a lakefront property. The trust was created for the sole benefit of your grandson, Ethan." The room went completely silent. "The property was purchased for $1.8 million, Laura continued, "and Ethan should have been notified immediately, but he never was." "What?" Mom gasped. "Ethan, you never said anything." "Because I never knew," I said. "I was never told about the trust, never informed about the property, and never given access to the house that my grandmother bought for me." I began placing documents on the table: bank statements, forged signatures, email printouts, property records. 4 months ago, Grandmother Judith gave me an envelope containing the trust documents. That envelope disappeared from my jacket pocket that same evening. I looked directly at Brittany. It was taken by someone who wanted to make sure I never learned about my inheritance. Brittany shot to her feet. "This is ridiculous. I don't know what kind of conspiracy." "Sit down," Grandmother Judith's voice cut through the room like a blade. Brittany sank back into her chair, completely white. I handed a document to my father. "This is a property management agreement, supposedly signed by me, giving Brittany full control over my property." Dad examined it, his face growing angry. "Ethan, this isn't your signature." "No, because I never signed it." I handed another document to my mother. "This is a rental agreement allowing Gerald and Marlene Rivers to live in my house indefinitely. Again, forged." Marlene looked stricken. "I don't understand. Brittany told us this was all legitimate." "It was set up to help me," I said. "But Brittany intercepted the documents, forged my signature, and moved your family into my house while I've been struggling to pay rent in a studio apartment." I pulled out bank statements. "She's also been charging the trust for management fees. Over 4 months, she's taken nearly $60,000. I handed the statements to Grandmother Judith, whose hands shook with barely controlled rage. "And here are emails discussing how to keep me unaware of the property transfer." The silence was overwhelming. Then Grandmother Judith spoke, her voice perfectly calm and controlled. "Brittany, look at me." Brittany raised her head, tears streaming down her face. "Did you take from your brother?" "Grandma, I can explain." "Did you forge his signature?" "It's not what it looks like." "Did you take from your brother?" Brittany broke down completely. I thought he didn't need it. He's never been responsible with money, and Philip's parents needed a place, and I thought I could manage it better." "You thought you could take $1.8 million because you didn't think your brother deserved it?" Dad's voice was quiet but furious. "You took my house, Brittany," I said. "You forged my signature. You lied to our entire family. You've been taking money that belongs to me." "We can fix this," Philip said desperately. "We can transfer everything back." "No," Laura said firmly. "Mrs. Caldwell Rivers has engaged in document forgery, wire fraud, and property appropriation. The authorities will need to be involved." "And that's not all," Grandmother Judith said, ice cold. "Brittany, you are removed from my will entirely. Every trust, every inheritance, every penny I had planned to leave you now goes to your brother." Brittany's sobs turned to wails. "Please, Grandma, I'm sorry. I made a mistake." "The only mistake," I said, closing my briefcase, "was thinking you were smart enough to get away with it." I looked at Gerald and Marlene. "You'll need to find other accommodations. I'll give you 60 days and help with costs. You were victims too." "We had no idea," Marlene said through tears. "We're so sorry." I turned back to Brittany. "You wanted to host Thanksgiving. You wanted to be the center of attention, the perfect hostess everyone admires." I picked up my briefcase. "Congratulations. This is definitely going to be a meal no one ever forgets." Laura followed me to the door. "Mrs. Caldwell Rivers, you'll be hearing from the district attorney's office within the week. I'd suggest you retain counsel immediately." I walked out into the crisp November air, briefcase in hand, finally free. Behind me, Brittany's voice rose in desperate pleas, but I didn't look back. The perfect Thanksgiving dinner had dissolved into chaos, and Brittany's carefully constructed facade crumbled into ruins she would never rebuild.